I start every workshop with gratitude. Without people like Spring and people's homes and organized places, I couldn't hold this event. I couldn't even fit you all in my tiny little studio place, and I live up in Santa Rosa, so it's a little bit out of the way for some folks. So I really appreciate Spring for working with me and given all the things that we've been through and the hurdles, but it's really nice that people made it out today, and I'm just really grateful for all of you and for this opportunity to share with you. So many years ago, when I first started doing workshops, and my friend Joseph used to come and support me, and my friend Ben, who's working the door, has been to so many workshops. I used to always start off with a love poem or a love letter to somebody I'd written, because to me, I'm a writer, and I'm a poet, and so writing is always central, and it's a way I give love. So I'm going to do the same, and I haven't done it in a long time. I now do it a totally different way, but I'm going to start that way because I just think it will get us into a good heart space and to talk about the stuff that's going on. Like the last drop of rain before spring, or the way a newborn looks into her mother's eye, or the way your hand fits into mine, or the miles we've flown side by side, or the enrapturous joy that fills my heart at the mere mention of your name, or the way we always try to see the good and the positive in everything we do, or the countless times we've sought refuge, shelter, and safety in each other's arms, or the way I have traced your tears with my index finger and imagined how intimately and infinitely connected we both are, or how the sound of your laughter renews my faith in the world, or the endless hours we've spent crying, holding, smiling, giggling, bathing, and fantasizing about our future together, that all make up such a phenomenal part of who we are. We remake, renew, and revitalize our bond like two birds building a nest. You return with brightly colored string, and I return with little twigs. Together we weave and build, stitch and sew, knead and mend, till something beautiful and strong and supportive holds us both up. I write to remind you that my love for you runs deep as the bay between us, deep as 100-year-old redwood tree roots, deep as the marrow in my bones, deep as the cellular layers of the universe, unending, unwavering, unstoppable. I waited a long time to find you, and I make no mistake what beauty you represent in my life. I do not take for granted the precious connection that we share. My love for you is infinite as the stars and eternal as the universe. Love and loyalty, Wendy. So, I hope that made her feel good. So there you go. There's my little opening. The next thing I'd like to do is start with one of the handouts that I sent. One side says Poly Resources, the other side says Poly Festo. Does everyone have a copy of this handout? If you don't, the handouts are over here on the far left. There's two handouts. One of them is a double-sided one-pager. Back side or front side, it says Poly Festo. And so what we're going to do is, and you can say pass if you don't want to participate, is each person is going to read one sentence, not a bullet point, just a sentence. When you see the period, it's the next person's turn to read aloud. And if you don't want to read aloud, if you're shy or it feels uncomfortable, just say pass and it can go to the next person. And we're going to do it like a circle. Okay, I'm going to start and then we're going to go to you with the Poly Festo. So one sentence each, okay? This is an outline for loving relationships, a doctrine for intimate revolutionaries and relationship anarchists, and a reminder to myself to live each day authentically.
I respect that each connection in my life will find its own right place, time, and spirit, with an appreciative understanding that each connection evolves in unpredictable ways.
I realize and value that there are all kinds of love, and not all of them are sexual. I will be open to all expressions of love. I will give and receive love freely and often.
I do not believe in placing arbitrary limits on myself or others, based on an understanding of love as a finite commodity.
Stop. In the back?
I firmly believe that The more love I give, the more it grows, and that people have an unlimited capacity to love.
I will strive to be aware of how social conditioning is affecting my responses to love and work towards breaking bad habits so that love can be redefined, explored, and expressed without hindrance.
I appreciate that each expression of love is special.
I recognize that all love has value and that one kind of love can never be better than another.
I will keep my heart open to receive love.
I will keep my heart open to give love.
I will not be afraid to explore and express love frequently in multiple ways.
I will be open to vulnerability and intimacy.
I will lower my shield to let love in and will slow down and listen when my shield goes up.
I understand that people have varied needs, that one person cannot fulfill all needs of another, and it is our responsibility to express and get our own needs met.
I recognize that this builds community and connection, which is the goal and helps to spread love.
I will encourage those I love to love more.
I will be supportive when someone I love finds love or expresses love.
I will look forward to any expression of love. Causes me to feel threatened or secure, or if there's a
I will be open to being told that I am not being supported.
I will examine my own fears and strive not to let them get in the way of expressing and experiencing love.
I will listen with an open heart if someone honestly hurts me.
I will strive to always respond with grace and speak authentically.
I believe in being open to change and fluidity in relationships, even when it hurts.
I believe love is the absence of guilt and fear.
I believe love is acceptance, that love involves choices.
I recognize that love can become strained, love can be withheld, and love can be painful.
I will strive to be honest with myself and others in order to remain compassionate to myself and others.
I respect that love fosters deep bonds, and that expressions of love should be encouraged without the fear of threatening someone else's comfort.
I believe that compassion, safety, trust, and respect are essential to maintaining love.
I believe that self-love is essential, and without it, love is impossible.
Somebody compiled what other people had collected and written on tribe.net. Oh, she didn't give me her name, she just said use her name as Paige Turner. I wanted to give her some credit, but she put that all together. So it's numerous people's writings and numerous people's ideas, and I love it. It's almost like one of those coffee table pieces. You can instantly start an engaging conversation just by going through one or two bullet points with somebody. So please share that with other people. It's a great conversation starter. Or it's great to look for what's missing. Every time I read that, I think about, there's no mention of commitment, and I have a big thing about commitment. So it's a good tool, that piece. So I have a couple things I just want to start out with. First, there's no one way to do polyamory, right? If you talk to 20 different people who practice alternative relationships, you'll get 20 different answers of how to do polyamory. So I will not be telling you how to do polyamory, but I will be guiding you through navigating some of that, and you'll figure out how you personally do polyamory based on the definitions that you might have or the practices that work or don't work. And so there's many scenarios. There's not just one. The other disclaimer I want to talk about is I am not a certified PhD. I don't have any credibility or credentials after my name, except nutritionist. Basically, I'm 47 years old. I've practiced poly relationships since I was in high school, before I had a language or a way to talk or understand what I was doing. I just seem to gravitate towards loving lots of people, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about my personal history, but it's that what I bring here is my experience. I still practice open relationships today, so I guess 25 years of experience is a I've seen a lot of the road. The last disclaimer that I have is about, I want to have this progressive poly agenda, and in order to do that I have to address white privilege. So I'm going to read you my little speech because it's important that I speak exactly how I mean and so we understand each other. I take this moment to recognize and speak aloud my awareness around the issues of white privilege, class, and sexuality, and the undeniable freedom and choices that are afforded to me because of this privilege. I bring this up because I'm white and the issue of race affects all of us personally, and I want to maintain an awareness and open dialogue around this issue. It's been very challenging for me to accept and be reminded that something that feels so liberating is also retains the same institutional oppressions as mainstream culture. So in our extended poly discussions, I hope that you'll take note of this oppressive conditioning and excavate it more fully in your own lives and relationships. But for today, it is my hope to use my privilege thoughtfully and respectfully and to facilitate a workshop that brings people of all backgrounds, be it race, class, gender, religion, disability, age, to discuss our emotions and challenges. It's my intention to create a non-judgmental space to support each other, perhaps for some of you for the first time, and to remember to address white privilege in every aspect of our lives and to carry that out into our discussions in the community at large. So I'm really passionate about that particular topic. So I jump in. Why polyamory? Oh, a cat is going to join us. Why polyamory? We live on a planet that's under siege for war and oppression and imperialism and capitalism and corporations and our very misguided government at the moment, and so war has been waged on poor people and people of color, people in prison, our animals, immigrants, and our precious dwindling environmental resources. I ask you, what better reason actually to talk about relationships? How are we, if we can't get along on this like small micro level in our little personal lives, how are we ever going to tackle the world? So a big part of the work that I do around radical love is that I'm a political-minded person, and I consider myself an activist. Bringing polyamory and open relationships to people's consciousness or awareness is not just about how many relationships and sexual people I can juggle, but actually about changing the world, transforming the world, making this a more loving planet. So the way that we fall in love with people, maybe we fall in love with the river or the mountaintop that's being fracking going on, or whatever, that we fall in love with this earth in ways that allow us to like be Gaia radical warriors to save the planet. So there's my big dream that you all know. I probably sound very naive, and but okay, I'm very idealistic. So anyway, some of you might be here because relationships are a juicy topic and complex, and some of you might be here because you've thought about or experimented in open relationships, and there's always more to learn. Some of you just may be intrigued by the idea, and you've come to find out how to talk about these ideas. And then some of you might be veterans who have been practicing polyamory even longer than I have, and you maybe could do a better job at this workshop than me. So somebody will carry the torch and teach the next workshops for the future. But what we all have in common is that our human interactions and our connections can be revolutionary and meaningful and powerful given enough belief in our values and our ideals. I'm going to read you a little quote from a book titled Days of War, Nights of Love. It's a kind of beginners for anarchists, and I opened the book just randomly to a random page. I was like, I'm not going to read this whole book, and it was a chapter for L, for love, and the title said, Join the Resistance, Fall in Love. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the chapter for me. I want to join that revolution, the one that you get to fall in love with things. So I'm going to read it directly from that book. Falling in love is the ultimate act of revolution, of resistance to today's tedious, socially restrictive, culturally constrictive, humanly meaningless world. The love transforms the world. Where the lover formerly felt boredom, he now feels passion. Where she was once complacent, she is now excited and compelled to self-asserting action. The world which once seemed complacent which once seemed empty and tiresome, is filled with meaning, filled with risks and rewards, with majesty and danger. Life, for the lover, is a gift, with the highest possible stakes. Every moment is memorable, heartbreaking in its fleeting beauty. Love makes it possible for individuals to connect to others in a meaningful way. It impels them to leave their shells and risk being honest and spontaneous together, to come to know each other in profound ways. Thus, love makes it possible for us to care about each other genuinely, rather than at the end of the gun of some religious doctrine. And in this sense, love is subversive, because it poses a threat to the established order of our modern lives. So the purpose of this workshop is to explore alternative ways to create loving and meaningful connections with anyone your heart desires. Expand the potential of all the people in your life as growing and evolving, deepening and bonding. Imagine the capacity of your heart to grow and evolve over time with each of them. Non-monogamy or open relationships, or what I prefer to call radical love, is the freedom to love who you want, how you want, the way you want, and as many as you want, so long as integrity, personal integrity, respect, honesty, and consent are at the heart of any and all those connections and the people involved. I'm going to read another quote because it helps us to expand in this ever-evolving love dynamic and revolution. Has anyone heard of the word Ubuntu?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you know the definition? It's very complex.
Yeah, it's that the self is given definition through the eyes of the community, and that it's the free sharing of love in that context.
Very good. This is a South African word, Ubuntu, from the Bantu language, and I quote from Desmond Tutu. I don't know how he feels about me taking his words and putting them in a polyamory context, but I'm sure he'd get a kick out of it. No Future Without Forgiveness is the title of his book. Ubuntu is very difficult to render in Western language. It speaks of the very essence of being human. You share what you have. It is to say, my humanity is inextricably caught up, bound up in yours. We belong in a bundle of life. We say a person is a person through other persons. It is not, I think, therefore I am. It says rather, I am human because I belong. I participate. I share. So in this realm of sharing, that is sort of, to me, how it relates to polyamory. You may interpret it differently. I'll give you a little bit about my background. I grew up mostly from, say, 19 on in the Bay Area. I came here from Southern California and went to UC Berkeley. I studied political science. I minored in Middle Eastern studies, alternative education, took a lot of PACS, peace and conflict education classes. And I always tried to explain to people why I can't be just exclusively with one person. And it was a very bumpy road. I mean, I definitely cheated like everyone who's sort of learning how to do something, and you're only 15 years old and you don't know how to say, like, well, I like you and all your friends. But maybe, I made a lot of mistakes, and I had no books. I mean, this is the 1980s. I had no book to help me navigate anything. There was no discussions, there was no internet, there was no way to find other people who might think outside the box and how to love people.
There was the Expanded Family Network, right here.
Yes, and then as I got older, I started learning to express myself a little bit better. And I started meeting people that I said, I'm sorry, I don't know how to be monogamous. So if you just want to be friends, maybe we should just be friends. Don't get involved with me. I might break your heart. Because I fall in love at the drop of a hat, and I can't be controlled. I don't know what I'll do. You know, and I would tell people I'm an anarchist, so I want to just do my own thing, and I don't want the man telling me what to do. But I think also at a very young age, as I became more aware that I was attracted to both boys and girls, men and women, I just couldn't imagine choosing. And now there's so many different gender blurring that now it doesn't matter. It seems completely irrelevant, the gender, to me. Like, I fall in love with people, and I fall in love with their hearts and who they are inside, and it has very little to do with whether it's a man or a woman or whatever. And then in my 20s, I met somebody, early 20s, and we stayed together for 13 years. We did get married. We lived together the entire time. And from day one, I said, I don't know how to be with one person. I'm very sorry. I hope you understand. And he's like, oh yeah, I want to support that. I believe in your freedom and your liberation, and I don't want to hold you back. And so I was married to this absolutely amazing man. And even though the relationship did end, it didn't end because we were polyamorous. There seems to be this double standard that people think, oh, you're in an open relationship. Well, it ended, so it must be a disaster. It never works. But if you're a monogamous relationship, nobody questions whether monogamy works. They're just like, oh, it's terrible. Somebody cheated. Well, you know, nobody thinks, well, maybe monogamy isn't working. So just keep in mind that when a polyamorous relationship doesn't work or only lasts 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, it's not the quantity of time that we should be judging the success of the relationship. It should be the quality. So I have relationships, polyamorous relationships with people that I've known 15 years, 18 years, 23 years of commitment to the friendship, and it has evolved and taken different, like forms, it is, sometimes it was friendship, and then it was sexual, and then we were roommates, and we decided not to be sexual, and then we were lovers again, and then we decided we wanted to be best friends again. And, it's a fluidity, just like gender. It can be very fluid. So you may feel very monogamous at this time, you're having a baby, you don't want to have sex with anybody else, and then all of a sudden you decide, okay, time to open it up, I'm ready to play and be with people again. So there's a lot of room for change. Which is why I like to say that this isn't a workshop just about polyamory. It's actually about redefining the relationship as you see best for yourself. So I actually believe that I am personally hardwired for open relationships. But I actually think that there are many times I've seen many times in my own life personally where monogamy was really great, actually. It worked to kind of solidify and not have too many people and bodies and boundaries and agreements all complicating each other. That like when I've started out a new relationship with someone I don't know too well, it's really great to be able to be like, let's just be exclusive and focus on each other. But even within that exclusivity, I'm like, but I can still hold hands, kiss, and have overnights and do bubble baths and do naked things with people, right? So it's kind of like I'm always trying to like push that boundary. I always have tried to push that boundary my whole life. Even exclusive means something very different to me than it might mean to somebody else. So again, it requires all that processing that we do. I think what's important to say is that there isn't one formula for everyone. I don't even think there's two formulas. It's not open or not open. It's open and not and open in on every spectrum. And also just some of the basics for examining our relationships is to challenge our socially embedded gender roles around them, to uproot socially perceived taboos around open relationships. Maybe within your communities you're able to talk about it, but there's a lot of cultures as well as people that find it completely, they're unable to speak about this with their families and with their communities, and they could be, or even religious backgrounds that keep us from having more open discussions about them. So that it's something to keep in mind, and to deconstruct societal pressures to conform. I mean, there's been many times where I felt like, oh wow, people are really pushing me, like, okay, you've been together this long, you should be living together, you should be married, you should be monogamous, you should finally get off that crazy ride that you're on. It's like, there are pressures behind some of the things, the choices that we make in life, and it's just important to be aware of that. And also to expose, and this is really important to me, expose how patriarchy, a system of hierarchy, influences us personally and in our sexuality, in our sexual relations, and in our assumed roles. So my intentions here are really to incite a kind of mini revolution in the hearts and minds of those of us who are daring enough to question society's concept of a relationship. We actually get to have our own definition of what a relationship is and means, and we're going to get deeper into that. So Another definition I have around open relationships is that it's a radically different, redefined relationship outside the status quo where partners encourage non-restrictive paths of love while remaining seriously committed to their partners, friends, and lovers. Open relationships seek a non-hierarchical form of love. All partners and lovers involved are aware of and consent to this form of relationship. Put another way by a licensed poly-friendly psychologist in the Bay Area, she writes, polyamory is a lifestyle in which a person may have more than one romantic relationship with consent and support, and hopefully enthusiasm, expressed for this choice by each of the people involved. Polyamory involves honest communication between partners and lovers about the existence of these relationships in their lives. So much research has been done, and even more so in the book Sex at Dawn, if some of you have read that book. But I have a kind of older study that I still find very interesting. It's called Human Instinct, How Our Primeval Impulses Shape Our Modern Lives by Robert Winston. And he quotes an ethnographic survey of 849 human societies across the globe. Out of those 849, 708 of them were practicing open, non-monogamous relationship styles. So we think of like America and the Western world is like, well, we know how to do relationships, but in actuality, the rest of the world and thousands of other people are doing relationships differently. We just don't hear about them. They're not part of our education. They're not in the media. And when they are in the media, they're grossly dramatized or just poor, what I consider poor portrayals of how there may be other people doing it very differently. And so Sex at Dawn brings up how some of these other cultures are doing relationships differently. And I think that's exciting. So the questions that get raised are all of us really biologically hardwired for exclusive one-on-one relationships? And how can we challenge our common notions of what a relationship is or could be or should be or has the potential to be? For me, I mean, the answer is to give love is, in any way, shape, or form, however briefly, is a revolutionary act. So everyone I love, my friends and lovers and sister, grandmother, pen pal, even a one-night stand embodies a form of daily activism for me. Every love letter, every flower picked, anyone you had a hug that lifted you off the ground, every consoling talk, anyone who cooked you a meal that made you fall in love, anyone whose kiss made you feel invincible, anyone you felt a loving, powerful, life-affirming connection with or an exchange with, however brief, is a revolutionary act. I'm going to give a couple of examples. These are from my Radical Love political archives, or what I call what it truly means to embody being an activist of the heart. I don't know if I'm sure maybe some of you have heard the grandmother story, but she's the most popular story of all that I have in my archives. And essentially I had started this job about 11 years ago, and I went into the office and I walked past this one woman's office, and every time I walked past there I was like, oh my God, she is so beautiful. And so I just instantly felt this love for this person I had never met, didn't know her name, and so I was like, I have to get to know her. So I tapped on her door after I'd been there a week, and I was like, hi, I'm the new girl, my name's Wendy. And she was like, I'm working. And I was like, oh, sorry to interrupt. And so eventually I got her to do a lunch with me. And I was completely enamored by her. And I just listened to all her stories. And I got this regular lunch thing happening. And then I invited her to dinner. And now we were becoming friends. And I courted her for a whole year. And after a year, I said, I need a grandmother. I need a bubby, as we call it in my Russian Jewish ancestry. I need a bubby. I need an elder. I have no one left in my life. Everyone's died or passed on, or I don't have a connection, and I really need someone who's seen the road ahead, and will you be my grandmother? And she thought this was crazy, but it turns out she was a real radical heart, a real anarchist in her philosophy, and we had all these crazy things that we had in common. We were both Russian Jews. We both consider ourselves philosophically anarchists. We are both political activists, and we both write poetry and love to read poetry out loud. And we both, she was feeling at the time that she would never get to experience having a granddaughter. because her son had already said, I'm never having kids. So that was it. She was like, I'll never have a grandchild. So we wrote our vows, and then we had a ceremony in her backyard. And at that ceremony, I handed her my keys. And I happened to live 6 blocks away from her. I was like, here's my keys. You are never without a second home, and you're always welcome at my house. And she gave me her keys, and she said, you can bring your dirty laundry, because that's what a bubby would do. And she's like, I don't want to be friends. I want to be your bubby. So I'm going to teach you some hard lessons, and we're going to have some good cries, and we're going to fight, and it's going to be a real family experience. And it has been. I mean, I have been chewed out by her. We've gotten in some spats. We've had to apologize. We have everything come up that a normal family has come up. 2 nights a week.
Wow.
For years, because I live in Santa Rosa, but I work in Oakland. So I come to my grandma's, I stay overnight, and then I go to work. My grandma never refers to me as her friend. I am always her granddaughter, or her Shana Maidala, and she puts pictures of me all over her house at every age, and I am a part of her family. And I've met her family and close relatives, and she's met my mom and sister and my people. So that's one example. I'm going to give another example. Again, I was going to work, and I kept passing this guy, this homeless guy, older man, and every time I passed by him, I was like, oh no, not that love gushy feeling. And it was happening every time I walked past him. I was like, oh, I just know I have to meet this guy. I have to hear his story. I gotta learn. There's something, we're supposed to connect. And so I was brave, and I said, hi, I'm a new girl here, and I see you on the street every day, and my name's Wendy. And I shook his hand, and we made contact, and he thought I was probably some crazy girl, but every day I made an effort to look him in the eye and to hug him, and to really just get to know him. And so when I'd get off work, I would cross the street and hang out with him. He would sometimes hang out in front of this woman that he had permission to hang out in her garage and wash people's cars in the neighborhood. So he had a good system there, and I just learned he's dead now. He died, but last year. But over those 9 years, I learned his whole story, and what put him on the street, and how he lost his 19-year-old son, and his daughter who has some serious drug problems, and just all the woes of what happens with money and poverty and institutional racism, and everything that happens is just a remarkable and incredible journey. And I used to bring him food. I didn't always have money, but I would bring him winter gloves and scarves and things, and mostly I just listened, and I loved him as much as I could. I always told him how much I loved him, and I always greeted him with full contact with my body and kissing him, and wrote him love letters and notes. So I don't know, I felt kind of like I can't make a difference in the world of homeless issues. It just seems so enormous to me. But maybe if each person felt inclined to befriend one homeless person, maybe we could make some kind of loving difference in their lives, or maybe we offer them a meal, or maybe we just wish them well, and just to see them, because I think sometimes we're like, oh no, I can't, I don't want to see you, it's too much. So making friends is always a good way. But I have countless stories like that. I have a woman I've known for over 23 years. I call her my wife. I've never been sexual with her, although I think she's really hot. But she's just my beautiful, emotional lover. She's someone I will grow old with, and some people know her as Adrienne, and she's just always been in my life for such a long time, and we've just been so intimate with every part of our hearts that I just, when I have new people that I'm romantic with, I say, oh, you got to meet my wife first, so I got to make sure that it's all cool with her first. So I feel like there's this very unique relationship with her. And anyway, so there's ways to be intimate. I still cuddle and sleep in my mom's bed when I visit her in San Diego. I have a lot of I need a lot of physical intimacy. Perhaps that's maybe why polyamory is good for me. I need a lot of hugs, and I need a lot of touch, and I want to give a lot of hugs and touch, and so that's sort of the kind of relationships that I try to foster. I think we have an enormous capacity to love. I think we never really look, or no one really asks us, how many people how deep are you able to, how much are you able to give? You know how they say like 10%, we only use 10% of our minds? I think the same is true for our hearts, that we actually we only use a fraction of what we're capable, and that there's this enormous potential for all of us to love more and to love deeper, and we have fear and we have rejection and we have all these other things and scar tissue layered up, but I think that we actually have a lot more love to give, and sometimes it's in ways that might surprise us. I guess my point is that all constructs and meaningful connections or interactions on any level are essentially a relationship, and that there's more than 1,000 ways to make love and to have intimacy in your everyday life, and every connection, not just your partner. I think we're very much driven to think that like love only means your partner, but in actuality we're loving many people. And this requires kind of deconstructing and dismantling what notions of what a relationship is supposed to be. I used to have this exercise where I would just ask everyone, like, you know, what do you think when I say the word relationship? What's the first thing that comes to mind? And over again, every time I did that exercise, people just had the same 2 answers. Half the group would say, oh yeah, I'm in one of those. I'm in a relationship. It's awesome. I'm so madly in love. So great, and she's amazing, and we kind of get this visual image of like, well, either a wedding cake or a mountain, but it's just you 2 at the top. And then I'd ask the other half of the group, and they'd be like, oh no, I'm not in a relationship. I am totally alone. I had one, she wasn't going so well, and so I'm not ready to try that right now. I mean, maybe someday. It's just not in the cards, or I'm, you know, half, not whole yet, haven't found my special person. And they're like at the top of this wedding cake by themselves. And so what's problematic about that, if we continue to think of relationship as only someone that you're in love with romantically or having sex with, then it means that it comes with all this other baggage. It comes with a hierarchy of like, where relationships are defined as heterosexual, which we know they're not, and they're defined as purely sexual, which we know many relationships are going on that are not sexual, and it narrows what a relationship can be. But so what I'm asking people is to think outside that box and to imagine that relationships actually can be the relationships that you're having all the time, the relationships you're having with your friends, and the relationships you're having with the people and that are meaningful in your life, your coworkers, your exes, your children, your pets, all of these other relationships. How about Mother Earth? Like the relationship you're having with your gardens and your all the other things in our lives that we make meaningful connections with are a part of that like radical love definition for me. Smashing that hierarchy paradigm and kind of rethinking like, oh yeah, I'm in a relationship and it's with my friends and it's with these other people and I'm getting love from all these different sources. So my question is, why can't our relationship model include anyone we interrelate to in a romantic or passionate way or have a heartfelt attachment to? Why can't cuddle buddies and best friends and that stranger you just had a 6-hour vulnerable, loving conversation be included in our expanded notion of a relationship? The point in redefining our relationships is it forces us to examine our concepts around jealousy and possessiveness and ownership. It forces us to challenge our accepted perceptions around honor, loyalty, fidelity, faithfulness. If there really are 1,000 ways to be loving, then imagine if all your significant relationships could be intimate and passionate in words and action and spirit, in emotion. And imagine if those relationships could include friends and lovers and family and community and our neighbors and acquaintances. And if there's not just one formula for everyone, perhaps like the popularly prescribed relationship paradigms needs to be shooken up, and that's what we're here to do. And this idea that one person can't fulfill all your needs, I think we kind of know that in a way with our friends. You know, we don't just have one friend who fulfills all our needs. You have a friend that you connect with emotionally, you have another friend that you really intellectually connect with, and you might have a friend that you love doing techie stuff with, and you have another friend who loves to watch I don't know, something straight, movies that you're really into, and like you have these different, and you might have romantic friends that you really feel juicy sexual energy with, and that's what you love to exchange with them. So it's like we know we have different friends to meet different needs, and I think we need that as well within our romantic relationships too. And I think it's a lot of pressure to put on one person to fulfill all your needs. I've always felt like I would disappoint somebody if I thought, oh my God, I have to fill every single need you have. Okay, well, I'll try to meet them as best I can. So I think that there's a kind of, skip on down to like some of the misconceptions and stereotypes around our open relationships. I think it's important to review them only because the conversations that we have outside with other people, it's helpful to know what people already are coming with their own preconceived ideas of like, oh, you do poly, oh, well that means X, Y, and Z. So it's almost easier to talk about what open relationships are not in order to better understand what they strive to be ideally. So the one concept is that anybody who's in an open relationship is a swinger. Has anyone heard the term swinger? It's a more casual form of, do you have a definition or a kind of idea? I don't either. It's more of a casual, a lot of play parties and hooking up with people that you may or may not care if you see them ever again or have their phone number or contact them, or only for a sexual purpose, not to get involved in your life or to remember your birthday or to have relationships with your children in any way. And so a lot of people seem to mix that up and just think, oh, you're in open relationships, that means you have orgies every weekend and you're like having sex with random people you don't know, and that's crazy. So that is a type of polyamory. It is a type of relationship model that people are certainly free to do and practice. But if that is not the way you practice polyamory, then it's really good to say to people like, oh, I'm not a swinger, or I actually am interested in commitment, and I'm interested in different, long-term sustainable relationships. You get to decide for yourself that open relationships doesn't mean just open sex, and to be aware that other people who don't know what you're doing or think they know how they're doing polyamory, but it's different, like to get that out of the way is really, really a good conversation to have. Also, commitment. A lot of people think that if you're in an open relationship, there's this notion that you are a commitment phobe, or I've been called a commitment phobe, which I find so strange. I'm like, well, how did I have an 18-year relationship, 13-year relationship, and a 23-year relationship if I was phobic of a fear of commitment? But in any case, some people come with these ideas that if you want an open relationship, it means you can't make a commitment to one person. But in actuality, I think people in the polyamory community are interested in having multiple commitments, a commitment to long-term relationships with just more than one person. So we get to hear and listen and speak to that if it may come up, when you're meeting somebody new and they're like, oh, poly, I don't know much about it. It's like they have the things that you might want to clear up. There's also this kind of interesting myth that poly people are not jealous. They never get jealous. And I find that so strange because everyone feels some jealousy or envy or some experience of discomfort if someone gets close to somebody else, and we get triggered and we're afraid of losing them, or something might come up. And it's not that poly people don't feel jealousy. It's actually we feel it, but we know we're going to just get through it. And we're going to figure out tools and resources and connect and find the ways to work our way into it and come out of it and have learned something from ourselves. So yeah, it's an emotion that we all feel. It's challenging and it's uncomfortable, but there's ways that we find that as part of growth, that we will grow through that. And then there's times when you just don't feel jealous at all. Sometimes I don't feel jealous at all. And then the last sort of stereotype that I wanted to speak of is we live in a culture where we've been taught everything is scarce. It's a scarcity. And so we're afraid that there will not be enough. And so that is why we learn to cage and trap and hoard and hold on to people, because we've been taught there's not enough love for everyone. And that's such a lie. We've sort of been brainwashed in that way, but love is actually infinite, and I think the more that we believe that and truly buy into an abundance, and that know that love is like being replenished and coming from us from all different places, even places we can't, acknowledge with words, like, the sun is loving us, and, what are all the things that you may believe in spiritually, like other things are loving us at all times, and our friends are loving us. And this idea that love exponentiates, the more love we give, the more love we have to give. It's like the more you practice being a loving person in the world, the more you feel rejuvenated and filled up by that love. Like, it feels good to give it away without expecting something in return. And it's actually a good practice. Or just to have loving intention with every exchange that we have, because, in that moment, that person picks up on that energy and is like, wow, thanks for this bottle of water. I'm so grateful for this bottle of water. It's like that person on the other end of that counter is like, okay, I'm feeling your love. It's such a nice thing to be able to give away. And also like this idea that love is gone. So yes, we've all had our heart broken, and we've all seen love walk out the door and felt crushed and felt like we were a loss of love. But in actuality, when you're loving someone, it doesn't mean the love from other directions is shut off. And the love that you have for other people doesn't shut off either. There's no turn-off switch. So when I'm spending time with my mother, I don't stop loving my best friend. And when I'm spending time with my best friend, I don't stop loving my other friends. And when I'm spending time with a romantic person, I don't stop loving anybody else, including myself. So in a way, love is happening all the time if we take the time to acknowledge that it's actually coming from different areas and different places. It may not be coming from the one person that you've decided this is where I want to receive my love, but it's actually coming in at every angle and at every direction, as long as we are able to acknowledge that. So I'm going to wrap all this up. Challenging institutionalized patriarchy requires revolutionary thinkers. That's us. And since the beginning of time, I've actually had the privilege of speaking to Indigenous people who've lived in alternative extended family structures for their survival and inherent harmony. Today there are people all over the world. I've traveled to Canada and Australia a couple times, and New Zealand and England and different parts of the US where people are reinventing their relationship structure and are trying to practice multiple partnerships and multiple lovers, platonic, romantic, or sexual, and extended family arrangements. If it really does take a village to raise a child, as the African proverb teaches us, then how can we foster new relationship models that are inclusive of multiple partners, whereby friends, loved ones, family, and acquaintances in your community are included in your vision of an ideal society of the future? I truly believe that loving many people is inherent for the survival of our planet. I don't actually think a monogamous structure is sustainable. I think that loving many people, not necessarily sexually, but loving many people is more sustainable and might actually help to save our planet. So alternative relationships are not easy or simple. We're actually going to break into small groups in a moment, and we're going to get into the harder work, the kind of nuts and bolts around that. And this requires rigorous communication skills and constant reworking and readjusting to these growing and evolving connections. And you have to have really good schedule, juggling, acrobatics. I'm in the middle of one of those. And it demands attentive reassurance, right? A kind of blind faith in love and an ability to learn in the face of tremendous challenge. Alternative relations allow you to make ethical decisions for yourself based on what ultimately is right for you. We live in a time we can choose our own gender, explore our sexual identity. We can decide for ourselves if we want to marry or not. We can choose to have a live-in partner, never marry. We can choose to have children or not. We also have a right to decide if multiple relationships are more suitable to our lifestyle. And it's time to stop letting society convince you that you should feel shame or guilt about how many people you choose to love. This is your opportunity to form new households for the future. And there's nothing stopping you from finding the courage to love as many people as you want. inviting them in to help raise a family, form friendships with your children, live in separate rooms, share lovers, share laundry, and start a mini revolution in the privacy of your own home. I do want to read one last quote, just because I find it so relevant. And I'm not going to tell you who said this quote, because it'll surprise you at the end. So, this person writes, if we stop defining our significant relationships only as those that are romantic or sexual, being single will take on a whole new meaning. If we broaden our emotional focus from the person we share bodily fluids with to the sum of our friendships, acquaintances, and colleagues, our communities will grow stronger. If we stop treating penetrative sex as the be-all and end-all of physical intimacy, we experience greater heights of pleasure. And if we can accept that although sex can be ecstatic and affirming and fulfilling, it is not all those things to all people all the time, we will relieve it of some of its cultural baggage. Does anyone know who said that? His name is David J., and he is an asexual activist and founder of the Asexual Visibility and Education Network. And he came to one of my polyamory workshops like in 2008 and said, I've never heard anything like this before. This is great. He's like, because I'm an asexual, I don't want to ever have sex, but I want to be in love and I want to have partners and I want to have, connections. And so I can't give sex to my partner, so I want her to go get it from somewhere else. So for polyamory, for the asexual community, has become this really wonderful form of relationships where you don't have to deprive your partner of something that you can't give them. They can go out and get that with other people if they choose. And so even when we think asexual, what does that have to do with polyamory? But see how we can interlink with others. I love the way he puts his message out. So, the next step is I'm gonna close. We're gonna get into little groups. The number between 2 and 4. Can't be 5, can't be 1, can't be 3. You could be 3. You could be a group of 3. And here's my suggestion. This is the best suggestion I can make. Don't partner up with somebody you already know. You will be more available to speak your truth and to be really honest about who you are, and you will learn more from other people if you're not partnered with the person you came with. If you be brave, you will actually learn more about yourself by not having to be censored. You can uncensor yourself and just speak more freely because you know the person that you're with isn't wondering what you're doing, and it's just a little less drama. Sometimes it's easier to speak more freely when the person you love so much isn't sitting right there. I think you'll get more out of it, but that's just my suggestion. There's no requirements, and so I'm going to close. We're going to break into your little groups and find a little spot, and I'm going to walk us through that next process, okay?